In Before the News Was Fake, Remembrances of a Rolodex, we will put a name and a face on the journalists who worked for the United Press International Wire Service in the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s. These were nameless, faceless individuals who were out there working for the stories, doing nothing more than getting the truth out. The interviews in the book are men and women that will tell true tales of what it's like to be on the battlefield with a pen and a paper, not a gun. They'll take you to an earthquake in Mexico City where 10,000 people died, and you will be reminded of the rest of the story, the way UPI did it, by Rolodex. Hi folks, my name's Beverly Stoddard. And today we're here at the birthplace of John Stark, who was a Revolutionary War hero. And we're here because we want to talk about what is the meaning of New Hampshire spirit. So I had the opportunity to talk to Joe McQuaid, who is the publisher of the Manchester Union Leader, and been with the paper for 50 years. And I asked him, as a longtime Yankee, what is the meaning of New Hampshire spirit? And in pretty typical Joe McQuaid humor, he said, well, it's going to be on the front page of tomorrow's newspaper. There's a bourbon that's been scented with beaver scent, touched with a beaver scent. That's the meaning of New Hampshire spirit. Pretty typical Joe humor, but that's not exactly what I was looking for. So I pressed on. It is true, there is actually a bourbon that is touched with the beaver scent, but that was not what I wanted. So I pushed on. I said, come on, Joe, the real spirit of New Hampshire, give it to me. What do you think? So then he said, well, we've got this live free or die state and this hellaciously large legislature. There are 424 people in the legislature in this one of the smallest states. And you know what? They can't get anything done. And you know what else? That's the good news. They can't get anything done. And then he said, and we pay them $100 whether they are worth it or not. Again, pretty typical Joe McQuaid humor. But I was not undaunted. I pressed on. I said, come on, Joe. Come on, Joe, give me the what do you really think about the New Hampshire spirit? I also wanted to mention that Joe McQuaid is receiving one of the greatest honors that a newsman can have in the state of New Hampshire or in New England, and that the New England Newspaper and Press Association has inducted him into the Newspaper Hall of Fame. God bless him, and that's great news. Congratulations. But still, I wanted to know about our New Hampshire spirit. So this is what he said. He said, John Stark was a Revolutionary War hero. He is the epitome of New Hampshire spirit. You know, he's a tough guy. He was a tough guy. He fought in the French and Indian War, and he was actually captured by the Indians. I believe it was the Abenaki tribe. And you know what they do to folks that they capture that are not on their side? They make them run a gauntlet. And they have one row of warriors on this side and another row of warriors on this side, and they all have tomahawks. And the poor soul at the end has to run the gauntlet. So John Stark, they don't know who they're dealing with. They put him at the end, and then he begins his run. But he starts by punching the first warrior on the left and taking his tomahawk. And then he zigs, and then he zags, and then he tomahawks and chops all the way down the gauntlet, and he survives. He survives. I'm sure not without any cuts or bruises. The chiefs are so impressed by him that they gave him his freedom. That is a spirited man. He was a New Hampshire man. I wanted to get this right also. John Stark was in the Revolutionary War, John Stark was in the Revolutionary War, but he quit. He was so fed up with the Congress at that time. He said to them, I'm done. I'm not working for you guys anymore. And he came back here to New Hampshire. Actually, the site that we're on here was where they kept their cattle on the farm, where they had to move the original stone from another place and they put it here. But he was just fed up with the Congress, and he said, you know what, I'm done with you, I'm going back to New Hampshire. But then the Congress finds out that Johnny Burgoyne's men and this hired troop of Hessians, you know, they were the Germans, they were really tough guys, that they're up in Canada and they're going to make their way down to Bennington, Vermont. The Congress finds out about this, and they say, holy mackerel, what are we going to do? If they catch up with Cornwallis on the British side, between the Johnny Burgoyne's men, the Hessians, and Cornwallis men, well, in Joe McQuaid's words, America is toast. What do? They call on good old John Stark, New Hampshire's man. And he says to Congress, he said, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do it for you. I'm going to do it for the New Hampshire people. And that's what he does. He raises an army. I believe there were around 1,400 men. These were not soldiers. These were farmers, laborers. These were just regular folk. And he raises this army, and not only that, he gets cannon. He drums up cannon, and then he takes this group of men, and he marches them from this greater Manchester area, and he marches them up to Bennington, Vermont, hundreds of miles away, and he does it in 3 days. An amazing feat considering the terrain. So they get there, and he's got a plan. He's got his men, and he's going to set a trap for Johnny Burgoyne's men. These Hessians, these wannabes who want to take our country from us. And he puts a group on one flank, a group on the opposite flank, and here's Johnny Stark in the middle, ready to take them on. And I wonder if he thought this on his own, but he must have figured that they were going to come straight into Bennington, and they would think that they didn't have a fight. And if you think about it, they're coming out of Canada. How many supplies did they have? They've probably already had a hard march themselves. They go into the town of Bennington because they need shoes, and they think they're going to just walk in there and just get whatever they need. They have underestimated John Stark. John Stark attacks them when they get into the city, and he wins. He and his men win the battle. It was a turning point in the Revolutionary War. Because of his amazing ability to put together an army and to direct them in the proper way so that they would win tactically, they made him a brigadier general. It was a turning point in the war. So they made him a brigadier general. But this is kind of fun. He was supposed to have said before this battle, there are your enemies, the Redcoats, the Tories. They are ours. Or this night, Molly Stark sleeps a widow. Meaning, he ain't going down without a fight. New Hampshire spirit. This is New Hampshire spirit as defined by Joe McQuaid. But it's also interesting, I want to mention, because Molly Stark, that when he said this rallying cry, Molly Stark's name became a part of future rallying cries. And she was a great woman on her own. She had 11 children. She served with John Stark on the battlefield as a nurse when there was a smallpox epidemic. She died when she was 77 years old. A great woman. So, no matter what you think about spirit, New Hampshire spirit in particular at this time, be it your soul, your character, your attitude. Just remember John Stark, and that's a great way of looking at it. Thank you.